I'm going to start by talking about the opening pre-title credit scene, because that really is the highlight of the movie. Now, I think some people are going to say, look, this is going too far into gross out horror. It's not really suspense and atmospheric dread, but I think that that's just a matter of taste. For some people, that kind of gory, gross, disgusting horror, that's good horror. And I thought it was great, because if you think, what would a trial in hell be like? It wouldn't make any sense. It would be completely arbitrary and nonsense and horrifying. And I think that that is really what is conveyed here, this kind of absurdism, this kind of delirious fever dream. I thought it was one of the better 5-minute sequences that I've seen this year. So what is the trial actually like? First of all, you have the auditor, who's actually played by the director of the movie. I thought it was interesting. He had maybe the meatiest role out of all the characters, and he gave it to himself. Now, first you have to confess your sins, and as you confess your sins, the auditor types them out on this old school typewriter, and blood is actually drained from your body to type out your sins. And then you have the assessor, a very gluttonous, obese man. He comes into the room, he drips children's tears on the paper containing your sins, tastes the children's tears, a little palate cleanser, and then he just woofs down all your sins on this piece of paper in a very gluttonous, disgusting fashion, and then pukes all this up. And then the puke is examined. It goes through the wall, through a tube, and then the puke is examined, very quickly examined by these 3 naked women with weird skinless faces. And I guess this is trial by puke examination, and then they give their verdict. So these 3 naked women, they're called the jury. They give the verdict. If the verdict's guilty, presumably they're all guilty. I've never seen a non-guilty verdict, but if the verdict's guilty, you're then taken to a room where you can't move and you're licked clean by these 3 other naked women. These women are very old. I'm not sure what their name is, but they lick you clean, and then the butcher, who is another very obese, large, hulking man with a baby mask, he comes in, and out of his back comes the surgeon. Now, the surgeon reminds me a lot of Venom from Spider-Man, and the surgeon has these big scythes for hands and just slices you all up, rips your skin off, and that is the beginning of your introduction to hell. And then the jury, the 3 naked girls, they get your blood sprayed all over them. I don't really understand why. I don't understand why the surgeon pops out of the back of the babyface butcher. I don't really understand any of it, but I think that's the point. It's just so arbitrary, so unfair, so absurd. You really do get a sense that this is what it would be like in hell. And another nice little touch, the house where this is all taking place is called the Ludovico House, and that's actually the aversion therapy technique from Clockwork Orange, where basically they would show images of him committing violence or images of violence, and then they would pair that with some kind of horrible, traumatic thing to him, and eventually he would learn to associate violence with bad things, and hopefully this would cure him of being a criminal. So now, as far as the movie as a whole, aside from that opening sequence, it was weaker, but I didn't mind it. Now, everyone's saying it's just a ripoff of Seven, including the director of the movie. He says it's Seven crossed with Hellraiser. Now, it's not exactly Seven. The serial killer is killing people based on the 10 Commandments rather than the 7 deadly sins, but it definitely borrows heavily from that. But I didn't mind it, and it was very short, so I think even if you think that the actual 3 detectives trying to track down the serial killer was weak, it was so short, you can't fault it too much. And all in all, I think this was a good movie. Now, it lost some of, I guess, the original philosophy of the original Hellraiser movies about the limits of hedonism and being a sensation seeker and always wanting more extreme and extreme pleasures. But I think if you look at it away from the franchise and just as a standalone movie, I thought it was a decent horror movie. And it did have some fantastic gore. I'm going to show some images, so if you don't like gore or if you don't want the movie to some extent spoiled, stop watching the video, but I'm going to show the images now. Look at these images. Like, these are some of the most creative images of gore that I've seen. Really cool special effect of a face getting pulled apart. And then this whole interaction, this scene I thought was great. The line, maybe it's time you learned a bit about matters that you seek to manage. Him taking the pins out of his head one by one and sticking them in her head. I just thought the whole interaction was great. And I had mixed feelings about the ending. The whole idea for him, the biggest torture is just living an ordinary mortal life and not having this power over people, and that he'd rather live in this huge pain and live with this pain and the suffering in order to be this great demon and have all this power over people. It was an interesting idea. I don't know if I would have included it, but all in all, I like that it seemed like this movie took a lot of risks and had a lot of ambition, and not all of it landed. Some of it I liked more than others, but at the very least, it didn't feel like just a carbon copy of what's come before. It seemed like they were at least trying to push the franchise in new directions, which I always like.